think we have a quorum. Here comes Caesar.
Hello, everybody. Sorry for being late. Too many Zoom calls.
Telling me, I've been on a continuous Zoom call since 11:30 this morning.
Oh, see, I beat you by I was on a 3-hour Zoom call, then a 2-hour Zoom call, and then yeah. So
Well, I had two earlier ones, but I did get 1 hour break between my morning Zoom calls and my marathon afternoon Zoom calls.
But at least you weren't in the car running around.
This is true.
You know, but sometimes that's really good for your head.
But not for the environment.
There we go. Well, it's actually I've been in more meetings since COVID has started than I would have been prior.
Oh yeah.
I know, crazy,
but
right?
mental health is crazy because it's, sometimes it's one topic to the other that are polar opposites of each other. So it's like, okay, which hat do I need to wear at what time? And 1 second I could be talking about statewide legislation, the next second I could be talking about solid waste, like we are now. So
Well, we're going to be talking about both of those things.
There we go. See,
statewide legislation related to solid waste.
Exactly.
So I think we have a quorum. So I don't know if Erica or Rosie want to go ahead and do roll call, and we'll go ahead and get started. And hopefully we can grab a couple others as we get going.
Perfect. And we do have Mrs. Cromines, who is president now of the committee. And I'll go ahead and start the roll call once she calls the meeting to order.
Well, then let's call this meeting to order.
Great. So President Cromines is present. Nikki Cosio
here
is present. We have Kevin McIntosh, seems to be absent. Grant Leonard.
I'm here, thank you.
Mark Bloom is absent. John Bailey is absent. Cesar Lara
present.
is here. Marty Horton
Here.
is present. Paula Getzelman
here
present, and Brett Sanders is present. So we have a quorum.
Thank you, Erica. So now would be the time for public comment. Anything not pertaining to the agenda, but in our purview. Does anyone have any comments that are joining us today? I think we had one attendee. Is there any public comment you'd like to make? Seeing no hands going up. Let's move on to meeting topics. Meeting minutes from the January meeting. Do we have any public comment on the meeting minutes?
No comment, but I move to approve the minutes.
Anyone else?
I'll second. Second.
Any other discussion? I seem to have an echo here. Hearing none. Do we need a roll call vote?
We do.
Erica?
So Nikki Cosio. Nikki? Okay, I'll come back to her. Grant Leonard.
Yes.
Cesar Lara.
Yes.
Marty Horton.
Yes, and can you tell me how to remute this again? Because I seem to not know.
I'm sorry, remove what?
Close the microphone again after I talk. Can you tell me how to do that?
I think it's *6.
Yeah.
Oh,
star
to
six.
turn it off too? Oh,
Yes,
great.
to mute it and unmute
thank-
it.
Okay, thank you very much.
No problem. Paula Getzelman.
Oh, sorry.
Yes.
My apologies. Yeah.
Thank you, Nikki. Brett Sanders.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Erica. Discussion on further meeting schedules and protocols. Patrick?
Yes, thank you. So I just, we could stop for a second, just do a quick introduction, everybody. So we have Christy Cromines from the City of Salinas. She's also the Solid Waste Authority's Vice President. So thank you, Christy, for agreeing to act as the chair, but I thought it'd be good just for each of the participants on the committee that's on to introduce themselves and what industry or group they represent. So maybe we could start with Paula.
That'd be lovely.
Hi, I'm Paula Getzelman, and I represent South County.
Thank you. Grant Leonard.
I'm Grant Leonard. I live in Castroville, and for this committee, I represent the North Monterey County Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you. Brett.
My name is Brett Saunders. I'm Paula Getzelman's backup for South County, and I'm also active in the cannabis industry.
Yeah, Brett is actually our cannabis representative as well. Cesar Lara.
Hey, Kirsty, it's Cesar Lara. I'm a Salinas citizen appointee. Gloria and Joe got me in here about a year and a half ago. Something like
Perfect.
that. Yeah.
Thank you. Nikki.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Nikki Casio. I represent the Grower Shipper Association. I'm the CEO and founder of Measure to Improve. We're a sustainability consulting firm for the produce industry. Happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki. And we also have Marty Horton on the phone.
I'm Marty Horton Ramirez, and I'm South County City. I'm from Greenfield.
Perfect.
Thank you. I think that's everybody, and so we'll go ahead with item number 2. So this is really just a check-in with the committee because we now have our board chair on board here to make sure that this date and time continues to work for all the committee members. We'll do this check-in probably once a year just to make sure this time slot works, which is the last Thursday or the 4th Thursday of the month from 3 to 5. So I just want to open it for any comments if anybody has any future concerns about that date and time.
Any comments?
Fine with me, Patrick.
Can somebody send maybe a calendar request for the next, or I'll just mark it on my calendars. But if it's a standing meeting, it's good to get it on the calendar so I don't double schedule.
Great. So as we said, right now, we're typically try to schedule these every couple of months. But again, they can go a little bit longer, or we can go once a month, depending on the needs of the authority. Right now, we're sort of working through some projects and things that will probably ramp up need for more input from the advisory committee. So I think for now, we'll focus on these being every other month, unless circumstances change and we need to have monthly meetings. But for now, I think we'll start with every other month and maintain that as our standard working schedule.
Thank you, Patrick. I certainly like the 3 o'clock time frame. I think if our schedules get busy that we're going to run longer, I'd prefer to have a meeting once a month than to go 3 hours on a Zoom call, or if we're in person again. So take that into consideration. Now, if we're all having to drive somewhere, of course you want to go to one meeting and have it run a little longer. But if we're Zooming, sitting here in one place for, 3 hours is daunting, as everyone has pointed out today. So while we're still Zooming, let's try to have them more often and shorter, I think.
Sure, that sounds good. And I think we do intend to have one or two field meetings at some point, and probably in the next 6 to 12 months. Maybe have a meeting. Maybe our first in-person meeting may be out at the landfill, and we'll give everybody a tour and an overview of our organics program, since that is one of the biggest focuses for our agency right now is organics management and diversion. So great, good input. I appreciate it. That's all I really have. Just wanted to check in with everybody on that and make sure the time and scheduling continues to work for everybody. So I'm hearing consensus that we'll continue with this date and this time placement.
Yeah, consensus. It feels like for sure, and definitely send the calendar invite, because if it's not on my calendar, sometimes I just.
We'll definitely do that.
I
calendar for the next year.
Yeah, I think that would benefit everyone. Even if it's every other month, then we need to add one in. That's easier than having to put it on there, for us. I do want to mention for public comment, I know that there's one person joining us from the public. If you wish to make a comment on any of these items, just raise your hand on Zoom to make a public comment. I don't want to skip over you in case you want to make a comment here. The next item is number 3, update on Senate Bill 1383, organics recovery programs. Mandy?
And not to cut in Grant Leonard here, I see John Bailey is in public.
Yes, I'm trying to move him over, but we're having problems with our Zoom meeting today, not allowing us to move people over right away. Oh, there it is.
There he is.
Yes.
Erica, do you know what number they push to come over from if they want to raise their hand from a phone? Because our attendee is on the phone.
So our attendee is one of our committee members. It's Marty.
Okay.
And she has the ability to speak now. So she can unmute herself by pressing *6.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Erica. Okay, go ahead, Mandy. I'm sorry.
Oh, no problem. Technology is wonderful as long as it's working. I'm going to give an update on SB 1383, which is our organics recycling programs. I had to go back and take a look from the last time that this committee met, and I think it was well over a year ago that I gave an update on what we've been doing. So we have been very busy over the last year, even though it's been COVID, but we've been doing a lot of work around organics recycling. So next slide, please. So we've been planning and implementing some pilot programs in order to meet the mandate. And our program reports for each of our member agencies were actually completed in October of last year. But shortly after we completed those reports, we were informed by CalRecycle that some of the information in there needed to be updated. So that was just completed in April of this year. And then based on those updates, we had to do some revised planning requirements, which we hired SCS engineers, who are the same consultants that helped us do all of our 1383 program planning reports. And they've provided us with a proposal to conduct an organics technology review for some of the various anaerobic digestion technologies that are available. So that's something that the authority will be looking at and considering. And this just actually will augment our existing composting capacity since we're restricted by the 70,000 tons a year by our air board permit. So it's looking to expand that capacity. And then in April of this year, our board approved the formation of our SB 1383 Technical Advisory Committee, or we call the TAC. So we have representatives from our city member agencies, the county, all the franchise haulers, Monterey Regional Waste Management District, and CalRecycle have all appointed representatives to attend this meeting. And it's really to get everybody on the same page and timeline so that we're meeting all the requirements for 1383. We just had one of our monthly meetings yesterday, in fact. So, and we had good turnout and good discussion. And then also, in order to maintain our program timeline, the board also approved an agreement with Action Research for us to conduct community-based social marketing project, which is related to how do we message for this new organics recycling programs. So we're going to do some research, and we'll use that research to develop our messaging. And then we've also started a pilot commercial food waste collection program that has begun in our 4 South County cities. Next slide,
Mandy,
please.
wait,
Yes.
I have a question. This is Nikki.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Will the notes from the technical advisory committee be available? This is great. This is exciting.
Oh, yes. I can send you the notes from
Great.
the meeting.
Awesome.
Let me make myself a note.
Thank you very much.
Yes, of course. Okay, so so I just mentioned we had to revise some of our 1383 program planning reports, and they were actually updated because we had to include biosolid tonnage, which is also known as sewer sludge, into our overall organics disposed numbers, which were not included before. We were not including biosolids in that. So currently biosolids are used as alternative daily cover at the landfill. And this practice will actually need to change in order for our member agencies to claim this tonnage as diversion. In addition, the reports are now reflecting the inclusion of 100% of the organics capacity. That is the requirement. We were basing it on the 75%, which is dictated in the SB 1383 requirements. So it's not 75%. We have to have 100% capacity for all the organics we generate in the area. So, yes, next slide. So that actually changes some of our diversion totals. So overall, the changes for our regional diversion totals are an increase of about 25,000 tons, and then a little over 30,000 tons if we're looking at including the biosolids as well. So by 2025, what this all means is our jurisdictions need to have organics capacity or have a plan to process approximately an additional almost 75,000 tons or 80,000 tons of organics material, including our biosolids. So we have a little bit more planning to do in order to make sure we have capacity for all of that organic material. Next slide. So in order to do that, we've started with some options for how do we deal with the biosolids. So our staff, Patrick, myself, and another one of our staff on my research recovery team, we toured a composting facility called Liberty Composting. The facility is actually located in Lost Hills, which is off of Highway 46. It's about 2.5 hours from the Salinas area. They operate a 100-acre composting facility that mainly accepts the biosolids from the LA area and like San Bernardino, I believe, that area. And they also accept some ground green waste and food waste, which they do traditional windrow composting for that material. This facility currently composts about 250,000 tons of material a year, but they can handle up to 350,000 tons. And just in comparison, our facility can only handle 75,000 tons. So this is a very large, well-run, extremely clean facility, even though they're dealing with materials that are not super clean. They operate their biosolids composting very similar to our system at Johnson Canyon, aerated static pile composting. So they blow, you can see here the pictures of the pipes and the tarps. They blow air into the biosolids for composting. They cover it for 6 or 7 days with a tarp. And then their main outlet for their finished biosolids compost are tree or nut farmers, as well as grain crop for animal feed. And they have capacity to accept our couple thousand tons of biosolids a year from our member agencies, but it would come at an additional cost for that transportation. Next slide. So now I'm going to go over a little bit of our pilot commercial food waste collection program. And the first program we started was back in December with Greenfield. So yay, Marty. Tri-City started collecting from about 7 food waste customers. And then King City, Go Bread, they initiated their pilot food waste program in February of this year. So we assisted the haulers in each of those jurisdictions with outreach and education, online training videos that we've created. We've provided internal food waste bins, as well as some of the compostable or bio bags that they're using to line those food waste bins. And then all of the collected food has been delivered to our composting facility at Johnson Canyon at the landfill. And again, this was a pilot program. It's brand new for all of us, all the 4 parties here mentioned. So there have been some tweaking and changes along the way, but that was to be expected. So next slide, please. So again, volunteer Greenfield, they were the first to say, yes, we will try this and start the pilot program. In order to introduce the program at a reduced cost, Tri-Cities who's the hauler, is commingling the commercial food waste in their existing yard waste routes, which allows the use of existing trucks and drivers. And Tri-Cities has been offering the food waste collection service to customers for free. They did that through July 1st, but have recently agreed to extend that through January 1st of 2022 in order to encourage more customers to sign up for the service. And again, our staff, as well as the Tri-Cities staff, we did the same outreach and education, provided all of the implementation, internal bins. And the pictures you see here are actually from the first loads of food waste collected from those 7 customers in Greenfield. They did a great job, clean, no contamination. So far, so good with their collection. Next slide. So these are more pictures of food waste. And this was from our King City customers. Again, they started their pilot at the beginning of this year, so in February. And they were also offering the same free service until July 1st, but they've also extended that through October 1st to try to encourage more commercial customers to participate. Again, these are pictures of the food waste that was collected from the King City customers. And again, very clean, no trash. And they only had the bio bags, no plastic bags. That's very important for collecting the food waste.
Mandy,
Next.
really quick, sorry. Are the customers like schools? Are they restaurants? Are they, can you say or no?
Perfect timing. Yes, of course.
Oh,
so
okay.
Food waste customers here on the slide are mainly fast food restaurants. There is some in dining restaurants, coffee shops, markets, small grocery stores. There's local bakeries that are on board. That basically has been made up of the South County food waste customer list. Good
Can you
question.
name names or not, Mandy?
Can I name names? I know a couple in King City that are fast food, like a Taco Bell. I believe it's Kentucky Fried Chicken or KFC. La Plaza Bakery.
That was my guess when I saw those oranges. I said that has to be La Plaza Bakery.
Yes. La Plaza, I think, is actually signed up in several, because they have bakeries all up along the valley. They're on in almost every jurisdiction. They are signed up for food waste.
Good for them.
Yes. Okay, so we have a total of 178 commercial food waste customers. Again, we've gone past Greenfield, we've gone past King City. So Soledad, Gonzales are also on board now with several customers in their area. King City is now up to 12 customers from the initial, I think 6 or 7. And then the majority of this is actually made up from Salinas and Republic Services. They've had a source separated food waste collection program since 2013, I believe. So their collection is a little bit different. They don't collect the food waste and mix it in with their yard waste. They've been taking food waste. Republic has been taking the clean source separated food waste to the Monterey Regional Waste Management District's anaerobic digester for several years now. However, that facility has closed. So since May of this year, which is pretty brand new for us, that food waste has now been redirected to our Johnson Canyon composting facility, where we first run it through the depackager that we have in order to reduce the amount of contamination, if there is any. And then we mix that in for composting. And then finally, the county also has 6 food waste customers that have also signed on. And I think I already covered who the customers are. So next slide. So in addition to all of this planning and all of these pilot programs, we've also been extremely busy with creating online content because of COVID. And that has included, we've done online landfill tours. We have transfer station tours now that can be viewed, school presentations that are online, janitorial trainings for implementing these programs, mini course education series, and how-to videos for schools. And all of this content is now on our YouTube channel. And thanks to Jana Falk, our recycling coordinator, she organized it all so it's easy and accessible to find. And then in 2021, our beginning of this year, we actually started our composting challenge. And this was in lieu of our normal composting workshops that we would have held in person. And we changed it up a little bit. And we gave away over 260 compost bins to residents that watched our composting videos that our staff created. They had to take a quiz and then they had to pledge to compost. It was extremely popular outreach, and we did like 100 times more. There was more reach with these online than there ever was with our in-person composting workshops. Our Spanish composting video got over 13,000 views, which for us is huge. And we had views from like South America and Peru. I mean, people from all over the country were watching our composting videos, which was great. And since schools are now back open for in-person learning, our team is now focused on implementing food waste recycling programs for the schools. Last week, we were in Gonzales for their 3 schools to set them up with food waste. And then this week, we've been at 3 middle schools in Salinas, getting them all set up for food waste collection. And next slide, I think that's all I had. Unless there's questions, I'm happy to answer questions.
Does any committee member have questions for Mandy?
I just want to say you guys are doing a great job. Thank you for all of the outreach.
Thanks, Nikki.
The only question that I have is there a plan yet to expand, or is that because it? Do we have any prospects, I guess, to expand it just to more clients, basically?
Oh, you mean for the commercial food waste?
Yes, the commercial food
waste. Yes. So we, obviously we started with what we always kind of call the low hanging fruit, the people that were super interested. And so now a number of the haulers are going back. That's why the haulers extended the free service through, a few more months to try to encourage more customers to sign up. Some of them are a little bit more reluctant. We're asking commercial businesses right in the middle, or I don't know where we are in COVID, but we're asking people to implement a new service and a new program where they're just struggling to, keep their business open, especially for restaurants and things of that nature. So we're also trying to be sensitive to that as well. This is, in terms of implementing new programs, it was pretty bad timing, but I think we've made a pretty good head start. So we're hoping once we come out of COVID, whenever that is, or however that works out, that we'll have a little bit more interest going forward, because we'll have, the restaurants and food customers will have a little bit more bandwidth to think about those things, as opposed to just trying to stay afloat and keep their business open. So yes, we're definitely wanting to expand. But I think we also have to, kind of read the climate, read the where everybody is in the current world and situation, and also be sensitive to that.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to gauge where we're going to go with COVID, so and
yes,
how that's affecting us. But yeah, thank you.
Yeah, good question. Patrick, you have your non-virtual real hand raised. You're also muted.
Yes, I'm not virtual. I'm actually here. I want to ask the committee in general. As we provide some of these updates, we'd really like your input on ideas. Other ways you think would be really helpful for us to get the messages out. Mandy and I just got off a presentation at the county, also about 1383. In fact, that's all we've been talking about all day today on Zoom meetings. And there are a lot of challenges, and obviously a lot of political concerns about things like enforcement. With 1383, there is a mandatory requirement to enforce and eventually even fine people who don't do the huge list of things they're required to do. First and foremost is just participate, get service, do the right thing. But there's a whole slew of other things that go on. And, our goal always, I think everybody's common goal is we want to use the first couple of years before those fines kick in to really educate people, get people to participate, let them know that fines may come down the road. But we really want to emphasize the carrot here before the stick kicks in so that people aren't taken aback, because we know the fine system, it's not going to be pretty. First level fines by law are mandated to be between $25 and $50. Second tier fines are 50 to 100, and third tier fines are 250 to 500, I think. So clearly, we want to use the first 2 years where it's soft enforcement, no fines, but a lot of education, a lot of helping people understand what's coming. So anything you guys think of in terms of ideas to help educate, help grow participation, that's going to be the toughest one. The common theme from businesses, and we heard that today at the county, is, we don't want another regulatory program. But unfortunately, this one's coming whether we like it or not. It's here, and it is a very broad reaching set of regs. So your perspective is really going to be important to us. Help us make our programs work better for all of our members.
It would be great if you could give us just like a one-pager update of where we're at and what's coming. It doesn't have to be exhaustive, but just a very high level that we can share, with Grower Shipper Association. I think a lot of our industry needs to be aware of what's coming. We've been reminding them, but I think they need constant reminders, especially with everything else that they have to worry about. So that would be helpful. Something just simple.
I'll give you a quick version, right? The two things in front of us right now, the most important things, obviously, is we're working on developing all the codes. All the cities, the county, everybody has to adopt the enforcement code technically by the end of this year. So, our department and particularly our agency and particularly Mandy's department and staff have been working really hard with our legal team to develop, the appropriate code using the regulations and also templates provided from the state. So those ordinances are going to be going through public hearings in all of our jurisdictions all across the county over the next 5 months or 4 months with the intent of getting those in place. So that, we'll get you that longer time frame of what's coming. But right now, the big one is getting the codes adopted and making some minor modifications to all the hauler agreements to make sure they have the right services and the right compliance programs in place that they're required to do under these new laws. These laws touch everybody. They touch you as a resident, they touch a business. There are requirements for us as a processor and a regional agency. There's a lot of requirements on the county, especially the Environmental Health Bureau. And it goes all the way up and down the list. Everybody has a part in this, and everybody has a repercussion. So yeah, we'll get that for you, Nikki. We'll get you some more summary, but that's the big stuff today in front of us, is getting the codes and the franchises updated.
Great, thank you.
Paula, you have your virtual hand raised.
Yes. My question was, from your perspective, from what you've been doing so far, what's been most successful with getting people on board? What aspect of your outreach has been most successful?
The free service.
Of course, yes.
They don't have to pay extra. But
Yeah.
you know, we've even had some, even when it was free, they still said no. I just, it's because it's a perceived, it's extra. I don't want to do more than what I have to do or what I'm already currently doing or whatever the case may be. But yeah, the extra extended free service has been a significant help, I think, to encourage these businesses to sign on.
When you start outreach with the general public at some point in time, are you going to follow suit with the same kind of outreach, or are you going to plan on having other factors factored in there?
So for residential, it's a little bit bigger fish, I guess, to fry, I would say. And so the outreach will be a little bit different in that we are looking at purchasing like kitchen scrap pails that we would offer, not give to everybody, not go door to door, but we would offer up and leave at like, you know, city halls or things like that. So people can come pick that up to make it a little bit more convenient and easy to participate at home. So you have somewhere to separate your food scraps from your regular trash. And some people may already do that. You know, people are already home composting and may already have the system. This is just to enable those folks that aren't doing it or don't, you know, would like a free container to help them do that. And then from all that community-based social marketing work, we're going to take the results of that and kind of use that to hone in what is our message to encourage more folks to separate their food scraps and put it in their yard waste container. So for residential, there's still a change because there's still a behavior change, but you don't have to change your level of service. You don't have to add a food scrap bin. You don't have to do any of that. You will now be able to commingle all your food scraps within your yard waste container, right? It's just a matter of knowing what can go into the yard waste container and what is still considered trash or contamination.
Can I ask one last question?
Yeah.
When you have dealt with the businesses, and it sounds like it's being relatively successful with businesses, at least those that are participating at this point, have they responded well to the success stories?
That's a good question that I don't think I have the answer to, because I'm not sure if we're marketing it as, oh, hey, you know, XYZ restaurant over here is doing it. Maybe you should, but that is something that we could potentially look at, especially for these businesses that are not interested or not, you know, early adopters.
Yeah, I was thinking testimonials sometimes, you know, from competitors or clients or whatever, sometimes seem to be fairly effective. And I was just wondering if you thought that might be something to consider.
I think it's definitely a good idea and definitely something we could 100% consider. I think that's a great idea.
Okay, that's all.
Grant, you were next.
Thank you. I think, Caesar, did you have your hand up before me? I don't want to step in front of you.
On mine, you were before Caesar.
But... Yeah, but go ahead, Grant, and then I come after you.
Okay. So, you know, in North County, we have fewer commercial areas. So, you know, I think it's probably easier to reach out to our Ferndale shopping centers and our industrial complex in Castroville and the commercial district of Castroville. And I would think having the haulers do the outreach would be a good approach, similar to what Waste Management did with their, Waste Management's thing kind of blew up in their face, but they tried to do a good outreach effort for the new fine system they put in for the bins, you know.
The smart truck technology?
Exactly.
Yep.
So I think a lot of people knew about that ahead of time, the people who look at their bills at least, and so it was successful. It's the people who don't look at their bills that got surprised. So, you know, I'd recommend working with the haulers on outreach. And
yes,
then,
we do. We do conjunction outreach and education with the haulers.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then I'm just wondering if you could explain a little bit about the difference between the organics laws and the recoverable food program laws. Because here at the city of Monterey, where I work, our sustainability office is really focused on recoverable food and preventing that from getting in the landfill. So working with restaurants and hotels, et cetera, to pick up the food that hasn't been eaten and then redistribute it to the food bank and stuff like that.
Yes, that's a great question. Edible food recovery, which I sit on the edible food recovery TAC subcommittee with Ted Terrasas from the city of Monterey. And we just had our meeting, I think yesterday, talk about edible food recovery and what are we going to do to help meet the mandate, which is 20% recovery of 20% of all edible food recovery to feed hungry folks, which is part of 1383. So edible food recovery is like a whole nother separate program, but it's tied into 1383. So really that's focusing on, it's still focusing on the small restaurants and the large, produce industry, especially for ag, is to divert any edible food that they have to feeding organizations, right? So that's what our committee is focused on, is who are all the feeding organizations that could take some of that edible food? Do they have enough capacity? What do they need to expand potentially capacity to take more edible food? And again, this comes back to the whole, right in the middle of COVID, we started surveying everyone, and half, if not more, of the 160 nonprofits that the food bank works with closed, right? Because they're volunteer organizations or because of COVID. So we're slowly trying to do some survey work to figure out, there's already a feeding network within Monterey County, and that's not really our purview, is on waste recycling and on the end result of what happens to our food, right? We're not a feeding organization. We're not an edible food recovery organization, but with 1383, we're asked to be, essentially, or at least to stick our nose in it and figure out what exactly is happening in our community and what are the resources and the outlets, and to educate those businesses that are generating edible food to then find outlets to get that to the people that are hungry. So it's a whole nother separate program. I think you all may know or may not know, but our agency has already donated 2 food recovery trucks to the food bank, refrigerated food trucks, so that they could, rescue more edible food. So that's good. The other good part of edible food recovery in Monterey County is that the food bank has a very large, brand new facility that has a lot of extra cold storage, which is great. But if there's no food being produced, then they have a lot of extra storage and not a plethora of donations coming in, which I think has slightly changed now that we're, I guess, coming out of COVID. But that was another thing, is that, the food bank with COVID was just inundated with their services increased to tenfold. A lot more people were interested in using their services once COVID hit. So I think we're trying to, again, be sensitive to that fact, and working with our food bank and working with all these other feeding organizations to basically develop that network, so that when we do go out and do outreach and education with the businesses that are potentially generating food, edible food, we have resources to say, this is where you could take it. That might have been a long-winded explanation for edible food recovery, and I don't know if that answers your question, Grant.
Yeah, it does. Thank you. It's that's Ted's main focus over here. So as I work with him, that's what I hear about in my work with this agency. It's all on the organics, and so it's interesting to me to see the different focuses between these 2 agencies I'm involved in. So thanks for explaining the connection there.
Yeah. Caesar, you had a question?
Yeah, it was more kind of like maybe advice on a couple of things. For the city of Salinas, the obvious one is the chamber and also the SUBA. the East Salinas or Salinas Betterment, but it's basically it's the East Salinas Chamber as well. And then the City of Salinas employs business navigators or a business navigator, somebody that helps businesses get their business license and everything else. And so they may want to know about this program because as they're onboarding a new restaurant or new business that comes online, so they at least say, hey, make sure you go to the Solid Waste Authority, and
that's a good idea, Caesar.
Yeah, as they're setting up their kitchens, for example.
So it's a business navigator?
It's a business navigator, somebody that, through the city council, they funded.
We added that this year. Yeah.
So we have at least 2 people, if I could be wrong, but at least one person that their job is to help businesses open.
Contact Megan Hunter.
Yeah, Megan Hunter.
Okay.
Yeah, Megan Hunter would be. And then the other recommendation I would have on the residential side is the tenants, the people that manage the apartment complexes. They're actually, I can't think of her name all of a sudden, but comes to city council meetings a lot, Christy. But they manage a lot of apartments. So instead of going to apartment owner by apartment owners, there's these companies that run apartment complexes. Property management companies.
Yes.
And Good. So reaching out to them, because if they manage multiple, buildings, it's better to hit them up now because down the road they're gonna have to do it, mandatory. But if
go to like Dally and Mangold and the larger companies. Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, and that way, if they're on board, because most people that own apartment complexes, they defer to the management companies to do like the garbage, contracts and that kind of stuff.
Yes, so that's a great suggestion, and that's
you're talking about Gloria Moore, aren't you? Caesar?
Gloria Moore, that's who I'm thinking about. I can't believe I forgot her name. I sat on this housing TAC meeting with her, and she's always been in my ear about the struggles of apartment complex managements. So, but yeah, they manage like tons of apartment complexes.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Oh, last one. And the Korean Merchant Association, they're big in Salinas. You may want to do a presentation about their meetings because they own a lot of, businesses that would benefit from it. It might be a good one-stop. And, they're big in Salinas, at least. I don't know how big they are, but the Merchant Association's big. Getting on their agenda and doing like a 10-minute presentation wouldn't hurt.
Great.
Yeah, a good way to make a group of people understand.
Thank you.
I like it, Caesar.
That's why we have you here.
Yeah. The advisory committee. I'm liking this. Okay. I cannot see the agenda. So on to are we on 4 now?
Yeah, it's an
I
update
believe so.
on street relocation and the city notice of intent to withdraw. So this is really just an update for the committee, but I do have an ask at the end in terms of a little help with us on what may be coming. So the update today is actually very positive. We have, and I want to start by giving a lot of credit to Christy and the council, but most importantly to the new city manager and assistant city manager, Jim Pia, for really coming in and helping to create a very collaborative environment to try to find a solution to what's been a long-standing challenge for both our agency and the city, and that is the city's desire to have us relocate our Sun Street operations outside of the Alisal marketplace, and a solution that looks to be moving in the right direction to solve this, and that is to, and those of you that have been on the advisory committee and the previous citizens advisory committee, you've heard all this before. You as a group, the original group, spent a lot of time, several years working on helping us cite possible locations for a permanent authority-owned transfer station. So for those of you that were there through all the thick and thin, we thank you for all the work you did. But at the end of the day, for the third or fourth time, we have rebounded back to the same location that continues to be the most attractive option, and that's the Madison Lane transfer station. So as you know, things have changed though. When we were about to buy or go through CEQA for that property, Republic Services came in and negotiated away the acquisition of that property. So the proposal that's been on the table is for us to cohabitate and partner on use of that property. Now, we will be a leaseholder. We will not be building a permanent facility. And so the division of responsibility that's been defined. So I think you have a couple items in your agenda packet. You have the letter of intent, which is the general terms and conditions for the partnership between the authority and Republic Services and who does what on the property. And then the second document is a memorandum of understanding with the city of Salinas that would basically facilitate termination of their notice of intent to withdraw and some other rate setting activities that we've been discussing for a few years. So we'll start with the LOI and the lease. So the LOI's intent is, again, the global structure of our relationship. We've executed it. It may be, Erica can tell me, it's maybe been signed. Went out for signature to Republic today, and so that's the final piece of that. That LOI is not binding. It is just a framework for what we're going to be negotiating. Those negotiations have already started. So the first piece of that is a lease. They're going to be leasing us a little over an acre of land. And the intent is we're going to relocate all of our, what we call our AB 939 programs that exist at Sun Street. Those are all going to be relocated to the front end of the Madison Lane operation. So the transfer station is actually going to have multiple functions. Republic Services is going to rebuild and develop a permanent corporation yard. So their current corporation yard is next door to us at Sun Street. They're on Rianda, but we share a common fence between us. So they've been asked to relocate as well as the authority out of the Alisal Marketplace. So there'll be, a big chunk of that area. You'll see to the left of the drawing on the screen is their new corp yard, parking, compressed natural gas fueling area for their fleet. And so that's one piece. The second part actually is the transfer station itself, where a lot of different materials will come in, be segregated, and loaded into transfer trucks and hauled to the appropriate location. So they'll be receiving in the transfer station things like construction demolition material, MSW, municipal solid waste, which is either coming in their franchise trucks or trucks from North County, hauled by Waste Management. They'll also be taking in all the organics at that facility, as well as the curbside recycling. So the lease basically encompasses the shaded area that is going to house our household hazardous waste facility. There's some improvements that we're negotiating right now, asking that they take care of those improvements prior to us moving in. Things like fixing the building that's there that was actually our household hazardous waste facility back in the late 90s. Adding some covered receiving areas so that we can accept household hazardous waste during heat spells and inclement weather like rain. And then the balance of that area will be various recycling operations, from your normal drop-off recycling for bottles and cans and paper and cardboard to the more significant items like mattresses, box springs, carpet padding, tires, electronic waste, all the things we currently do. But this is actually a little bit bigger space than we have for those operations. So we're going to move that entire part of our operation over there and run that component. Republic will operate everything inside the transfer station. In other words, they will load trucks, they will segregate material. They'll continue to operate that station, but it will expand in its capacity to handle all of the customers that are currently going to Sun Street, as well as all of their franchise garbage, of which about half goes to Sun Street now and the other half goes to Madison Lane. So there will be a big expansion in the materials going in there, but they have secured the appropriate permits from environmental health and the state to expand the use of that facility. So the one piece inside the transfer station, and this segues back to the 1383 discussion, is there'll be a side agreement. Basically, they call it a license agreement, but it basically is just an operating agreement that allows us to manage the receiving area for organics, and that's very important for us because of our role as the processor and the coordinator for the region on 1383 activities. Is that we want to see that material when it comes out of the truck for a lot of different reasons. And some of the things that Mandy already discussed when we talk about enforcement, we need to be able to identify where there are problems. So where we may have communities that are throwing green waste in your garbage, we may be doing surveys actually in the transfer station. But most importantly, we're looking at what's coming in the green waste loads, and particularly what's coming from the franchise. So if we can identify, for instance, a route, a specific truck on a specific day, then Mandy and her crew can go out and they can do focused outreach in that specific area of the community to try to reduce contamination, increase participation. And the third and probably most important part is it's much easier to remove contamination when it first comes out of the truck than it is to remove it at the landfill when it's all been consolidated in a 100 cubic yard transfer trailer. When it comes out of that, it's much harder to get to that contamination. So this gives us a chance to educate both self-haulers in particular, but also to work with the drivers on routes to identify problem areas that may need more outreach. So that would, basically we'd be operating inside their operational space under a license. Would just be a couple of staff people and probably a small loader to help, separate loads and pull out debris and contamination. So that would be the second part of our operational component. And then the third piece is they've agreed that they would allow us to use our transfer fleet to move all materials that are destined for Johnson Canyon. We already have an existing fleet. We already have staff. And so basically our trucking operation would expand a little bit, and we would provide that trucking service between Madison Lane and Johnson Canyon, and only for materials that are destined for Johnson. So that's going to be construction and demolition debris. It's going to be waste. It's going to be organic materials primarily. Those three things will be loaded into the authority-owned transfer fleet, and we would move those down to Johnson Canyon under contract. So basically, when this is all said and done, there's going to be 3 agreements in place. As I said, we're currently in the middle of negotiating the lease and the transportation agreement. Those are a little more complex. We're blending public and private entities. That always adds another layer of complexity and legal work that has to be done, but it is ongoing. We've exchanged edits. We're currently coordinating a meeting directly between legal counsel for both entities to try to work through some of the first rounds of edits and some legal issues. So that is hopefully going to occur tomorrow or Monday. And our goal right now, at least the tentative goal, is to have those 2 agreements done and ready to go to our board for execution in our September meeting. So we're on a tight time frame. We're pushing real hard. City's pushing us hard. We're trying to meet those time frames. And so in conjunction with that, there's some other things going on. Obviously, the I think we've discussed this before. The city's been negotiating new terms and conditions for their franchise agreement with Republic Services. That agreement and is actually the whole package is all tied together. In other words, Republic's leases will say things like, the lease is conditioned upon, the city and Republic executing this agreement, and there's sort of counter issues there that we're just making sure everybody's protected and has the best interest of everybody in mind when we sign these agreements. So that work is going on in the background right now. And again, that's our big focus for the next couple of weeks to get these ready for our board, hopefully in September. And then the second piece of this is the MOU with the city of Salinas. So, in exchange for the board making some of the concessions that they've had to make in this one, for instance, not building the permanent transfer station we envisioned, the board's asking that, if we do this, then we'd like the city to rescind their notice of intent to withdraw, come back in the fold, and let's move past this period of time and have a kumbaya moment and deal with the challenges at hand, like 1383. So the MOU with the city, which again, our board has approved and was scheduled for the city's agenda on Tuesday of this week, but due to a COVID exposure, they've had to continue that meeting to September 14th. That is still in front of a couple of days in front of our board meeting, where we hope our board will be executing the leases. But that MOU is effective upon the authority making the permanent commitment, which is signing the lease. That is the condition of the MOU that obligates the city to rescind their notice of intent to withdraw and to agree to pass through fully equalized green waste rates. I won't spend a lot of time talking about that. It's a old agreement the authority signed in 2004, and it gives Republic some very preferential rates that just aren't sustainable with the 1383 requirements and the new state regulations. And so the intent is that by that part of the agreement, in July of next year, the city would agree to equalize the rates, pass through the full cost of organics management through their franchise rates. And that is a requirement actually within the authority's joint powers agreement, that all member agencies have equal rates for the same services. So with that said, that MOU is very simple, doesn't have a lot in it, just says basically this is what will happen, and it becomes effective upon the authority executing a long-term lease. And again, that lease, the initial term of the lease is tied directly to the proposed term of the city's upcoming franchise renewal, which is a 15-year term with 2 5-year extension options. So at least in the short term, the authority has a home for at least 15 years, potentially 25, if Republic Services remains the city's hauler past the initial term. And so this advisory committee, or those of you that may still be on it in probably 9 years, maybe 9-10 years, may be asked to start having the discussion again about what do we do what happens if the city and Republic part ways in 15 years. We'll need to have that planning process start up again to consider alternatives to continuing services for the community. So there's some tricky stuff coming in the end that we'll have to work through as an agency and as an advisory committee. But for those of you that may still be here, I'll just be a phone call away if you need advice. But I think it's a good compromise solution for everybody. And I think it's the pathway that will give us the best chance of sort of solving some of these institutional issues and getting back on the same path. So that is really an overview of everything that's going on right now. that work is in a lot of phone calls, a lot of work going on right now between all three organizations, as well as all of our lawyers. There's a lot of lawyering happening at the same time. So we're hopeful we can get through the last few hurdles on those agreements that we're working on right now and have them ready. So my one ask, and I think what's coming up that's going to be the next challenge in this whole relocation project is really, how do we transition our customer base, which was just reported out to we do an annual report every year, and our board just received we call our tonnage and operations report. Last year, we saw the highest traffic count in the history of Sun Street. We received 116,000 visitor trips to Sun Street Transfer Station last year. And that does not include the people who just go in and use the recycling center. So we figure that could be another 20% potentially, because those people don't go across the scale. They don't have a recorded transaction. So those 116, those are paid transactions that go across our scale. And probably another 20% are using the recycling center or household hazardous waste, which aren't paid transactions. So that's a huge amount of customers, huge demand, great public support. And the key here is, when we relocate, there's going to be some challenges. There's going to be clearly some challenges. One is it's a significant line of business for the authority. So we want to make sure that we take all of our customers with us. The authority is going to be relinquishing rate setting. In other words, this is a privately owned facility where Public Services will be setting rates. 70% of that rate is controlled by the authority, because 70% of what they charge is actually our tipping fees. But the other 30% is really set by Republic Services and adjusted. So there'll be some rate changes that could drive customers to either go down to Johnson Canyon, over to the Marina landfill, or hopefully not do the wrong thing. So that what's really important for us, and the feedback we're looking for from the advisory committee, is the messaging that we need to do. We want to discourage people doing the wrong thing. We want to encourage them to use authority facilities so that it doesn't impact our revenue, because that can have an unintended consequence of requiring further rate adjustments, right? Because it is a significant line of business for us. So the messaging is going to be really, really important. And that work will start in earnest the moment the lease is executed and counter-executed. We will start that process of letting people know sometime next year. Could be as early as the beginning of March, but could be later in the spring or up to early summer when we actually relocate. Because Republic has some infrastructure work to do to prepare the site for us. And they've indicated they think they'll have it done by March. And then we have basically 60, 90 days to move our operation over there. So I'm going to shut up for a minute and just see if anybody has any suggestions, ideas. We'll definitely raise this again at the next meeting. But thoughts on how do we message this in a way that we retain the customer base that we've spent well over a decade developing, and retain obviously the revenue and the services. We want people to use the services that are being provided, just as they've done at Sun Street.
Caesar.
Yeah, the only kind of request that I have is, has the authority set some money aside for temporary signage and permanent signage, working with the city to make sure that we have some permanent signs to help people get to Johnson Canyon. I mean, not to Johnson Canyon, to the new transfer station. Because if, there's two level of people. One of them is commercial, people that use the facility very often. And then you have also the weekend people like me. Probably in the last 6 months, I've been there 3-4 times to make some drop-offs. So if we could get some money set aside for signage, some of it is temporary, for the first 6 months or something. That's definitely on the previous site, but also how to get to the new facility, because it is a little tricky to get there.
Right.
Yeah, and then the second is I've seen you guys run some TV commercials, so redesigning some of those, at least for the first 2 years. I would recommend maybe 2 years, to make sure that people know through TV and whatever other kind of budget you already set aside for that, for PSAs around that, and then set some money aside. I know that they usually don't collect my customer information when I make drop-offs, but is there some database of like more commercial property, or some customer database is what I'm basically saying, making sure we do a multiple postcards kind of campaign or something, so people at least know, because we shouldn't be waiting for the last minute to transfer people. And is there going to be some overlap? How is it going to work? Is it going to be like a dead, is there going to be a date when it's like, okay, we're turning off the switch here and turning on the switch over there, or is there going to be some overlap? And so,
well, if I could clone my employees, we'd probably do overlap. But the reality is, we operate a tight operation, and it's likely going to be a switch. Though we'll likely have people stationed at the transfer station, maybe one employee that can provide guidance for a few weeks. I think we thought that as one option. Signage, definitely, radio, TV ads. Our customer database is really limited to customers that actually have charge accounts. And we normally do direct information to those folks about things that are changing, or holiday schedules where we might be closed. But as far as the rest of the customers that come in, the only thing we ask for is what city you came from, because that's a state requirement that we record where the waste, which city it came from, not even what street or what district, but the city or county itself. So I think that's all good ideas. I mean, we have done very couple of times mass distributions. You can get mailing lists and do a general mailer. The unfortunate part with that is, being a recycling agency, most of those end up hopefully in the recycling bin, at least, so that it gets recycled. But most people don't always read those things, and so that I think it's a tool that we'll probably have to consider doing. I just don't know how effective they are, but clearly, I think Spanish radio is probably one of our best outreach venues, because we have obviously a lot of Hispanic folks working in the fields in particular, and the radio's a great media. I mean, it really, we probably spend, I don't know, Mandy, what percent of our budget, 60%, 70% on Spanish advertising. So I think that's one area where we definitely will put a lot of focus in early on. So that's what we're starting to have those discussions now, because the time's coming where we're going to have to start letting people know this is coming. The downside or the challenge for us is all the advertising we do early on, we can't tell people what the date certain is, because the date is tied to when Republic basically gives us notice that they've completed the improvement. So that's going to be dictated by things like weather. We have a really wet winter. It may take them a while to get asphalt done and some of the construction. The bid season, how many, are they going to be able to get all the bids in time? Also permitting, if any of the things they're doing require permits. So there's a bunch of unknowns for us. I know they're working through that with their engineering firm, and hopefully they'll be able to find ways to expedite that and stay on that schedule of giving us notice early in the spring, so that we can immediately start our second part of the campaign, which is this is the date specific when we close. Then we can have a sign. We get the sign built ahead of time and just have a blank for the date. Well, to be
we can write it in with a Sharpie, right? A black Sharpie. We get the date.
We're going to leave on a date to be determined. But that's the challenge, is that messaging, so that we really don't want to lose our customer base. We've worked way too hard to develop a really solid committed customer base that for the most part all want to do the right thing when they come there. We don't want to see them go off into the wind and drive long distances or do the wrong thing, which that is a fear that some will choose to say, I don't want to pay extra money. I'm gonna, go dump it somewhere. So a lot of sensitivity around illegal dumping right now, especially the county, because more often than not they're the recipient of illegal dumping. But it happens
the outside edges of the city.
Yeah, that does happen in the city too. There are, quiet little spots where people will dump something out and drive away. So it's a fine line we'll have to get through over the next couple of months. But any input you guys have now, and we'll raise this again next month as an update, ideas on messaging and how we retain our customer base, that's going to be really important for success during this transition.
Yeah, and I would say as many community groups as you possibly can get the information out to.
Yep, absolutely.
Grant, you had some questions?
Thank you. Well, just humorously on the point of running the two centers at the same time for transition period, I'm not sure how everyone in the city of Salinas would take the idea of having not just one transfer station, but two in the city at the same time. Although I understand the logistics of helping people transition. I am looking forward to that kumbaya moment when it actually is real and we can start telling people. Because we've been working on this for a long time. I've been working on it for 4 years with you guys. So really looking forward to it becoming more than just letters of intent and that becoming something real. I'm wondering, what did the agency do when Crazy Horse Canyon closed? To redirect people, that might be a good model for redirecting people to the new transfer station. And then, go ahead.
Well, I'll give you the quick answer on that. We didn't do as good a job as we could have. And it did take us several years to get our customer base back. Crazy Horse has been the city's disposal facility since 1934. So as you can imagine, it was a very well embedded utility and institution for the city. And so closing it, created, we had the same growing pains. We had a lot of illegal dumping. Fortunately, most of them were what I call responsible illegal dumpers. They dumped them at the gate of Crazy Horse. So at least we were able to clean it up in one spot. It wasn't all over the county, but that'll likely happen. So I think the idea of, again, having a staff person or volunteers or somebody that can, be at the transfer station for some period of time after we close it to provide direct guidance to people, hand out flyers, obviously signs and things of where we're going to be, will be very prevalent there. So when we did Crazy Horse, we did a lot of advertising, but I think we've matured a lot on our advertising programs. Like Mandy in particular has done a great job of really, staying up with the times with, social media focus and community-based social marketing work that she's doing now. Those are all great tools that are becoming really predominant. So I think we'll be doing a lot more of that in advance of the transition to get people informed, along with the old school stuff of, handing out flyers and maybe sending out cards to people and, more traditional media.
Yeah, excellent. And then just, kind of hammer home that point about illegal dumping, because that is a huge concern out here in North County. We get a lot of it on the Blackie roads, the Espinosa, the Paradise Valley. So, I'm not, like, I think Mandy was quoted in the Monterey County Weekly a couple of weeks ago about it's just seems to be impossible to reach those people or to convince a certain number of people to stop their dumping habits. But yeah, anything to let people know what services are out there so they don't dump, that's going to be really appreciated up here.
Great.
Thanks, Grant. Paula?
Thank you. My question was, when we are looking at the people that are currently using SunStreet and we want to retain them as your customer base, what are there 2 or 3 top reasons? What's in it for them to go over to Madison Lane? The older for me, instead of just giving them the facts.
Well, I mean, the customer base is there because people need disposal services, and I think the issue around convenience is the first priority, right? People like the fact it's convenient. It's right here, like SunStreet's in the middle of the city. It's accessible from all areas of the city. It's not Madison, it's a little more to one end. So that obviously may make the work for, say, someone that's down in the industrial area, down on Abbott Street. They got a little longer haul to get out to Madison Lane. But Madison Lane's been around for a long time too. It's just the public doesn't use that, even though they're open to the public, they probably get less than 2% of the public traffic. All of that's coming to SunStreet. So I think the convenience of having it in the city and not having to drive down to Gonzales or over to Marina, which both facilities, end up having longer lines because we get public traffic there. So convenience is the top issue, And
when you talk about convenience, though, are we talking about the kind of convenience that will be actually more convenient than going to SunStreet? Is there anything we can say about Madison Avenue that will actually be better?
I mean, they really both. I mean, there's more space, but
good for them.
I think that the whole goal of our negotiations with Republic is we don't want to get rid of any services, right? We have a very comprehensive set of services we provide at SunStreet. We want to take those with us, right? That's why our biggest focus is not the waste side, but it's on the front end, the recycling services, the diversion, HHW, organics, receiving and processing. Those are our highest priorities. And so we want to make sure that when we move over there, we're at the front end. So we're going to be one of the faces of that facility, and that commonality will help bring people over. But as far as the facility, there's really not anything that much different. I mean, we're going to provide the same things. It's the same level of service. It'll be a bigger facility. There will be more traffic in there, mostly because all the franchise garbage will go there now instead of half of it. I think the only downside with Madison is to get there, you have to go through the Laurel Street, Davis Street intersection, which tends to be at certain times of the day pretty crowded. But it's not, I don't think it's going to be that's like attractant.
Okay. Well, I think as Caesar said about a database, if we had a good database that we could tap into, and then, start early on, as you mentioned, with multiple hits to your current base. That seems to be the best way to actually. The problem with sending across the board to everybody is it's such a waste. You're not targeting the people that you're already using.
Right. Well, we definitely will be targeting our customer base as early in the process as possible. So flyers, cards, actually handing it to the people that are regular users. So when they come in, there'll be signs, cashiers, frontline staff will be doing their best to, let people know what's going on verbally, connecting with them one-on-one, but also, handing out flyers or other information on what's coming so that people are, made aware. Because as Caesar said, he uses it several times a month. And I'd say a large percentage of our customer base, come there at least 2 or 3 times a year. And so if we start early, we're very likely to catch the majority of our customer base
Right.
with information, because they're going to be there at least once between now and April or May when we move. So yeah, I think handing cards, handing information to the actual customer, we get right to the people we're trying to reach.
Yeah, and so you need to get the cards made relatively quickly.
Yes. Yep. The plan here, and the reason we're asking for input from you today is help. We're going to get started on this work. We won't do anything obviously until the lease is signed, but that's not that far away. So the idea is we want to get planning on this right now and sort of get our game plan clear. So once that lease is signed, we're on the ground.
It takes time to do artwork and get things mocked up. And if you can have all of that done and just have to plug in a date, you're well ahead of the game at that point. Caesar, did you have something else, or was that a legacy?
No, it truly, I got an earful from the maintenance people at the city about about the transfer station, and I hear them, and maybe working with you, council member, on making sure that the city updates their signage of no dumping in certain spots, because that's going to be the unintended consequence of what we're doing. Is some people are gonna, want to travel, they're gonna show up, it's gonna be closed up and said, go over there. Either they're gonna get lost or they're gonna say, never mind, and dump in the usual places. And it's gonna be a process. Sadly enough, it's gonna be, I threw out 2 years, it might be longer, but we also have the problem of people dumping even with the transfer station the way it currently is.
Right.
But at least, and I'll put my 2 cents with the city, and we have a council member here, so I'll tell her is maybe if the city could make sure that we update our current no dumping signs and maybe increase a couple signs, because the maintenance crew knows exactly where the repeat locations are. Let's be honest, like they tell me exactly where dumping happens in the city, and I hear about it, and you probably hear about it too, Councilwoman. And so if we add some signage saying if you get caught, you will get fined, the standard thing. And maybe that's more of a cost on the city of Salinas side, but there is going to be unintended consequence of us moving, is there's some people are going to just dump and run.
So I'm going to put in my 2 cents here before we move on, just so that everybody on the committee is aware, a little 2 cents about me, kind of introducing you all to me. My husband actually does work for the city of Salinas, and he is the only city employee that is dedicated to driving around and picking up the garbage in the city. So he actually drives, his title is the inmate crew coordinator, which means that he's the person in that van that drives around and picks up trash. For the last almost 2 years now, he's been doing that alone, because during COVID, he hasn't been able to have anyone doing community service in his van. So he is quite aware of where all of those dumping sites are. And he has, you can quite imagine, been heavily in my ear over the course of me serving on this board for the last 3 years now. And during this negotiation for, where is Sun Street moving? So I've been very dedicated with Patrick and with Jim Pia to, finding a home, getting us moved, and really addressing the issue of what are we going to do about getting people over to the new location. And Patrick's aware of how anxious I am about that issue. And so, I'm really going to push Caesar, and, I'll tell the rest of you, I'm going to push for the city. I mean, I don't even think it's about signage. I think it's going to be about having more, probably more city staff patrolling when we move. When Sun Street moves, that's going to have to be our dedication to the move as a city, is going to have to be better patrol of those areas to make sure that they realize that they're not going to get away with it, to get them to drive to Madison Lane. Because I agree with you, Madison Lane, and it's in my district and, not far from my house. So it's much more convenient for me. But there are people that are used to it being where it's at, and it's going to be less convenient for them. So, it is going to be an educational process that I'm dedicated to working with you guys on. And that's my 2 cents. Does anyone have anything additionally they'd like to add to this conversation before we move on?
I just want to thank you all for that. I think you guys have provided great advice tonight. So I think that's really going to help Mandy and I and the rest of our team sort of get down the road on some of these big issues like 1383, and also this transition, which is very important for our agency and for the city, and most importantly for our customers, our 140,000 visitors a year. They rely on that facility. Salinas is a very large city, and it's a growing city, and a centralized transfer station that provides a full one-stop service is absolutely critical, mission critical for a city this size. You don't see large cities without these in them. So yeah, appreciate all the feedback you guys have given us. That's going to really help us make this as smooth as possible. It's not going to be perfect, but this will help.
Well, I think you guys are right on target with having some sort of postcard or flyer to pass out as soon as possible to people visiting now. I think that's extremely important to the success of this mission. And it is a mission.
And it could be just a quarter size little postcard. When I pay at the tipping window, I get handed a postcard with my change and receipts.
Yeah.
Yep. Big bright signs and handouts and yep.
Be simple, bright yellow, something that catches people's eye. Is there anything else, Patrick?
No, that is the end of our agenda. So we just open committee comments for anything that's not on the agenda. If any committee members have anything else to add before we adjourn.
Does anyone else have anything they'd like to comment on before we adjourn the meeting?
The only quick comments, and I know at previous meetings we spent a lot of time about what the future of the franchise agreements are, the whole lining up contracts or something like that. So maybe at a future meeting, getting an update on that. I know the topics we talked about today were really important, took up the appropriate amount of time, but in a future meeting, because I know that's going to be big for the ballot.
What happens in the topics we discussed today, what happens will determine what happens with that down the road.
Exactly.
But absolutely. Thank you, Caesar. Well, thank you all for joining us today, and I'm happy to be chairing your committee meeting. Thank you.
All right, everybody, be safe. Thank you very much.
That I will call this meeting adjourned. Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Mandy,
Bye.
a pleasure as always.
Thank you. You
Bye.
too.
Thank you.
Bye. Nice to see everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.